When we learned at Channel 4 that this storm was going to be a lot bigger than people were anticipating, probably about 3 days before, 4 days before we actually knew what was coming at us. There was one thing that my news director at the time, Sandy Breland, decided to do, which was split the staff. She said, in case anything happens in New Orleans, we have got to set up shop someplace else. So all the guys stay in New Orleans, and the rest of the guys and all of the women go to Baton Rouge. So of course the girls were like, what? What do you mean? We understood. We did understand it. We didn't like it. So they kept one anchor at the time, who was Karen Swenson, beautiful, talented woman that I had the honor to replace when she took off 6 months later. And Jill Hazu, who kind of laid low where nobody could see her. And that's how she got to be a part of the group that stayed in New Orleans. Smart girl, should have hung with her. That was the sentiment the day before Katrina hit. And then 3 days after, when the levees had breached, and the Baton Rouge crew knew that the New Orleans crew was there, we felt so much panic and fear for our friends that were still covering the storm in New Orleans. Anytime the communication signal would die out in New Orleans, they would say, okay, Baton Rouge, get ready, we have to pitch it to you. And during that time, that's what would happen. We lost all communication with the New Orleans guys. They were living at the Hyatt with many of you. For many of them, it was a relief to know that they were sleeping at the same place first responders were. Because that's what you do, you make people feel safe. So that's how we rationalized a lot of things. Oh, the police is still here, we're okay. Firefighters are still here, we're okay. National Guard's here now, look at that, great, all right, we're okay. So I wonder sometimes who you guys turn to get that sense of security. And then I realized that if we didn't have that direct channel with God, no one in between would matter. So, I'm trying to get through this because for whatever reason, this year is also a little harder. What is it about these milestone numbers, 5, 10s, and 15s and such? One of the best stories of triumph, at least as a journalist staff, was to finally be so humbled, because so many times it was before, you know, hey Luz, can you come in at 4 o'clock in the morning? We just had this huge shooting in the 9th Ward, we need you to cover it. And it was someone else's story. And I'd show up, and I'd look at the people and see who would be willing to talk, whether they wanted to talk about the perp that, you know, got their kid in trouble or whatever. But for the first time, this story was about every single one of us. At all levels. From having your house destroyed, which was 80% of our staff, to being part of that 20 that felt guilty because your house wasn't destroyed. And then seeing, Channel 4 is one of 19 TV stations owned by the same corporation, as well as the Dallas Morning News and a couple of other newspapers that are still staying afloat somehow in these digital times. And eventually, after we started to learn that the levees broke, on the 3rd day of being in Baton Rouge, we had 150 extra staff members from our other 18 TV stations show up at LSU's campus. We took over their dorm. They kicked us out 2 weeks later when they were like, guys, really, our kids have to start college. You gotta go. And we moved to 2 different apartment buildings in Baton Rouge. Our New Orleans staff eventually joined us on day 6 after being here. And we commuted every day by helicopter into New Orleans. And those 150 employees became honorary New Orleanians. They wanted to come back. They kept wanting to come back. BLO started their own fund for us, where every employee would donate a percentage of their paycheck every pay period to support us. That's just not corporate America these days. So we were humbled, we felt closer. And the stories that we told about you guys were the ones that were just so moving and amazing. We had people come hunt us down over at LPB, Louisiana Public Broadcasting, eventually when we moved out of LSU, because they had to start college. We had to go to Louisiana Public Broadcasting. And we had the Houston Fire Department show up because they were watching us on the World Wide Web. There was one day when we got about 6 million hits on our website. And the Houston firefighters found us and said, hey, we know you guys were here, we just drove in from Houston, can you take us into New Orleans? Because at that time, one of the only ways to get into New Orleans was through River Road, down St. Charles Avenue and to Harris. We said, sure, come on behind us. And they came with about 10 truckloads of water, ammo, you name it. But one of, probably can't even count how many groups anymore. And I'll never forget the faces of the SWAT guys when they see the, hey guys, somebody tell the media's here. Somebody tell them the media's here. And then we're like, no, we're not really here to tell a story right now. We just kind of brought these guys in for you. And the Houston firefighters and NOPD got there and just started dropping stuff off. And when they realized that, they were so exhausted. These faces were so exhausted. And they were like, oh, okay, thanks guys, just put it over there. Because you guys were just in this mode of, we're just trying to get through whatever has got to get done. So it's been an honor to tell your story from that day to the day that finally Warden Burl Kane decided to turn the Amtrak train station into the first prison so you could actually do something with the looters. And that was day 10. And so now, 5 years later, how far we've come. And to be a kid that was born and raised here, went to Cabrini High School with a lot of the children actually, for whatever reason, we had a lot of firefighters' daughters that went to Cabrini at the time. And to just know the families that brought us back. I can't tell you how humbled we still are by you. And just once again, thank you for thinking of my name for today. God bless you. Captain Joe Fincher, could you come to the podium and tell your story, sir?